Hello and welcome to my show, The Awakening, here on WGSN-DB, the Going Bold and Going Solo Network. The information and opinions expressed on this show are just that, the opinions of the individual speaking based on their individual personal experience. They are not intended to diagnose and do not constitute professional advice or recommendations. So you know the pain, stress, and struggle that divorcing people go through? Well, there is a way to find peace and sanity and assist the lawyer. This all helps save thousands of dollars in your processing, your legal fees. So my name's Tina Huggins. I'm your divorce coach specialist, divorce consultant, restorative family mediator, and conflictual co-parenting coach. And my guest today is Amy Slate. Amy is an experienced real estate agent with a passion for helping others through life transitions. She created the Breakup Broker to fill a much needed niche. Her calm demeanor, extensive knowledge, and natural teaching ability make her a trusted partner for the clients in need of guidance and support with their real estate transactions while simultaneously going through a divorce. So, Amy, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So I've talked with Amy before, and Amy and I had a really good divorce conversation. And then as we prepped Amy, or as Amy prepped for coming, she actually shared some of her information that she experienced. And the reason why she actually started the Breakup Broker, which I thought is just a wonderful name. So Amy, kind of tell us a little bit about why you ended up back in Boston and opening up such an interesting real estate office.
Sure. It has been a wild ride, that's for sure. I'm originally from New England. I was in Massachusetts for, oh my God, almost probably 15 years before moving to Florida, where I was with my then husband for 3 years. And one day he came home from a trip abroad and said, "We're done here." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And as you know, your world gets turned upside down and you spend some days eating oyster crackers in the guest room, and then you pull your boots on and you figure it out. So I packed up my stuff and my cats and drove back to Boston, where I am now, and kind of had some reflective moments and said, okay, I'm the only paycheck now. I've got to pay all my bills. I've got to figure this out. I've got to build my business. I'd been out of Massachusetts for a bit, so I had to kind of rebuild my clientele and my network here. And while I was doing that, I was on these Facebook groups and support groups for women going through divorce. And so many of them had so many questions about, do I sell the house? Do I have to sell the house? How do I sell the house? Can I buy something? Where can I buy something? Do I need to rent? All these real estate questions. And I was thinking, these are the same questions I'm having, but I do it for a living. And so it's only like this stressful for me. These poor women, it was like this stressful for them. And so I just started thinking, okay, I've got to rebuild my business. And there's this population of women that could really benefit from my knowledge and expertise and just like my way of being in the world and listening and understanding and being supportive. And one morning I woke up and said, the Breakup Broker, it's happening. And I've been working on that since mid to late last year, just really honing in on what do these women need? How do I connect with them? How do I build networks to support them? Yeah, it's one of those turning lemons into lemonade kind of stories, I guess.
Yeah. So in the discussions that we've had either via text or in person, you talk about the coercive control. So kind of in your definition, explain what coercive control is so our viewers understand.
Yeah, and I am not the textbook
No,
writer.
this
I
is
don't know the definition, but I will give you my experience. I will say during my marriage, probably a lot of it was happening that I was not acknowledging was that. And as I continue to unpack it in therapy, I'm like, oh, that was that. Oh, that was that, right? But what's kind of more front and center for me in this moment is he very quickly drained all of our bank accounts and moved all of our joint money into accounts only he could access, right? So that financial control. He's dragging his feet on some things and not signing documents, so we can't sell some of our properties. He's not being responsive. He's being very adversarial and very threatening, for lack of a better term. Actually, I vividly remember May perhaps of last year. I was at a girlfriend's house and I got an email and it said, "Return the garage door opener." Because I had like left with my car and it was on the visor and it was the last thing on my mind. I ignored it. I still own the home. I have access. I should be able to access the garage if I want. The next day I got a nastier. He was doubling down on returning that garage door opener. So I ignored it. The third day I got another one, even nastier, about him returning the garage door opener. And it seems so petty now, but in hindsight, like, I was feeling unsettled every time I opened my inbox. And finally just said, like, I am not going to let him exert that level of control over my day to day, feeling this pit in my stomach, like waiting for the next thing to come. And so I went no contact. So thankfully, I've actually been relatively free of the coercive control for the last 11 months or so.
So our viewers understand a little bit about what she did. Now, you don't have children, correct?
Correct.
And in Amy's case, she did exactly what I would suggest that she have done. When we open that email, those texts, when we open them, we have this knot in the pit of our stomach. And in fact, it's really higher than that. It's like right underneath the heart. It just hurts. And we're so afraid. Our heartbeat goes up. We get anxious and our anxiety levels are off the charts. And so one of the things that I tell my clients is that if it doesn't need communicated, then it's like a gray rock. You just drop it and walk away from it. Just walk away from it, because by continuing the conversation, you continue to feel the way you are. And in your case, Amy, he's the one that decided that he wanted the divorce, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So you got to go through that shock and awe of everything. And generally there's one person that wants a divorce, and they come in and they tell you they want the divorce, but they've been thinking about it for months, if not years. I know in my case it was years, trying to figure out how to get out of the relationship. And because we've been thinking about it for years, we're already ahead of the healing curve in that aspect. And so here you were getting shocked with the I want a divorce, and like you said, you were eating crackers in the other room, and then decided that you needed to pull up your bootstraps and do something about it.
Yep.
And what you did was, like you said, you made lemonade out of lemons. So the lemon being your divorce and the lemonade being this wonderful name and the way that you go about your work as a real estate agent. But I don't know how many people understand what a real estate broker is. So can you explain that to us?
Yes. And full disclosure, I'm actually not a licensed broker, but in Massachusetts, they do use the terms interchangeably. You will hear someone call an agent a broker an agent. It just happens. And it kind of flew with Breakup Broker, so it all worked for me. But in general, I work for a broker. So there is someone who's not my boss per se, but kind of like the buck stops here. They're the ones who like enforce the guidelines and the rules and all that. One of my teammates is an associate broker, so I am surrounded by many brokers. I just don't actually have that license. But it is almost like a next level of licensing in the real estate space.
Okay. So, and the difference between a real estate agent and a real estate broker is what?
An additional coursework and a license, taking a test and getting the license.
But in your case, you can help people sell houses in other states and buy houses in another state.
Yes, and a lot of that, even if you are a broker, you're licensed by state. But what we can do is we have a professional network. So I can call my agent friend Wendy in Florida, who I adore, and say, "Hey, Wendy, I have a client. I know you're well-versed in the divorce real estate world. I'd love for you to help her." And so now client A, who needs to sell a house in Florida, talks to Wendy, and Wendy takes care of that. And then we kind of just refer business back and forth like that.
And that's cool. Like, I can tell you, and for you and for all of our viewers, I use a realtor in every single divorce case. And the reason for that is that my clients are just they're like pouring money. They have to pay for this, they have to pay for that, and then they've got their attorney and la 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 la. So by having a realtor, a realtor can go in for me, for my client, and do comps on the home. So they can basically get a free estimate of what their house is worth. And that gives them, then they can take those comps and they can actually use them in their divorce proceedings as proof of what their house would be worth. So in this case, like I've got realtors all over the place, but now having you in my back pocket is huge because you've got people all over the place too. Like I've got this wonderful realtor and we're trying to work together in another divorce arena, and his name is Cortez, and he works in Denver, Colorado, and he is somebody that has helped me in several situations over there. And what was really cool about him, which I guess I just didn't see this, and this fits into your back pocket, is when I was talking to him, he was listening to me buy my house over here, and I was struggling with the realtor that I originally started with. And he's like, no more said, I can go out and find you a realtor right now. You just give me the okay, and I will go and interview them for you, and I will find the one that fits. I thought that was so cool that a realtor could do that. So that's technically what you do, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's so many pieces to that. When you are a divorcing woman, you are up to your eyeballs in paperwork and calls with professionals and all the things of like figuring out your life, that if someone came to me and said, I'm taking that off your plate, I'm going to go do that for you, I would be like, have it. Whatever it is, just have it. I know you, I trust you. And I think agent to agent, we know the questions to ask more than just someone who hasn't bought or sold a house in 20 years would. And so we can be a little bit tougher of critics. And I know I'm also very sensitive to, I'm gonna sound like the kids, like the vibe of the person, right? Because I know my client over here who is divorcing and has real estate needs, they've got a certain emotional state, they've got a level of stress, they've got a level of just like chaos in their lives that needs to be really tended to appropriately. And I love all my real estate agent colleagues, but they're not all well suited to deal with that necessarily. And so finding an agent who not only is good at the real estate piece, but is good at the person to person interaction and supporting someone through an emotionally draining time is crucial.
Yes. It is so cute, crucial. When I was buying this house, I wasn't going through a divorce. I was probably going through a worse state in life where I had lost my husband.
Mhm.
And so I was here doing all of this as a single woman all by myself. And I know that you focus your work towards women, but you'll work with men. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And so I focus my work towards men, but I work with women.
Mhm.
And I can tell you, as a single woman, I came into this brand new home, which is where I'm sitting right now in my office. And when I first came into the house, I didn't want it. One, I was afraid of the organization that was selling the house. And then two, it was all white. Everything was white. The cabinets were white, the walls were white, ceiling was white, floors were dark, but everything else was white. And so it seemed very, I don't know, sterile to me.
Yeah.
So it was interesting because my realtor did not say anything to me. She just guided me to the next house and the next house. Well, I had put an offer on another house that I thought was going to work great. And then when we had people look at it, it had flooding issues. And since we had just come out of the hurricane, that was
Mhm.
a big issue for all of us hunting for houses at that time. We didn't want to be anywhere that something could flood.
Right.
So she says, well, why don't we just go look again at this house? And this is my guidance from spirit, right? So I get back in here and it's a whole different vibe. Here we use the
Yeah.
word vibe again. It was a
Yeah.
whole different vibe. But this time the realtor showed the house in a different way to me.
Mhm.
She knew when I walked in the first time I wasn't real happy with it.
Mhm.
And so this time she said, "Oh, well, you were worried about your china hutch. I think it could go there. And I think that your little curio cabinet that you talk about could go over there, and your couch could fit over here." So she was giving me this view of what things could look like.
Right.
So it was a whole different thing. Now, in your case, you're working with people that are all over the place. And like Cortez, when he showed me the house, or when he told me he could get a realtor to show me the houses and stuff, he's all the way in Colorado. I'm over here. So kind of explain to our viewers how that kind of works so that you get paid.
Sure. So again, we have these professional networks both within our same companies and outside of companies. I've got like an extensive just social media connection network of people whose work I've watched and learned, and I have had conversations and trust them. But typically the way it works is called a referral fee. So back to my friend Wendy in Florida, if I called her and said, Wendy, I've got this client, she needs to sell her house. And Wendy goes and takes care of that. Wendy then sends me a portion of her commission for me kind of providing the lead to her. And that's just how we pass money around. And that's what allows me to be able to do my work for free too, because I can come in as a consultant to these people, to these women who are already paying attorneys, paying forensic accountants, paying private investigators, paying everyone under the sun, and say, like, I'm going to do this for you for free. And it's also going to bring me a lot of joy. And we're going to get your house and your real estate stuff taken care of. And I'll get my money, but you don't need to worry about it.
That I can tell you that when I offer that for my clients, they're like, free. I never thought about having a realtor do the comps. I thought we had to have all the appraisals and stuff. And I'm like, if you don't need an appraisal, don't get one, because it's just another expense.
Yeah.
And in my clients' cases, they're divorcing a high conflict personality, a high conflict person.
Yeah.
And just like your former husband, they're being attacked. And in almost every single one of their cases, they're being financially abused, just like you just explained.
Yeah.
And so to have somebody be able to come in and do something for free just touches them, and it makes their it makes their whole day worth that smile for me.
Yeah.
So what are some of the questions, Amy, that you have when these women or people start coming to you in the middle of their divorce?
Sure. So, as it pertains to real estate, I always disclose I'm not a therapist nor an attorney. I will talk real estate all day long and I will be a listening ear, but I can't give legal guidance or financial guidance. Um, I think we talk about in general just their needs, their buckets of needs. What do you need right now? Do you need to stay in this house? Are your kids in school? Do you work around the corner? Like, what are the things that make you maybe want to stay in this house? And if you do want to stay, can you afford it? Or if you don't want to stay, can you afford to leave? What are the different options that exist? Because everyone's situation is so drastically different, not just from what they can afford, but what they want. Some women are like, I never want to see inside that house again. Like, I just want to be done with it. I want to move out. I want to put floral wallpaper up and have my space, right? And so it's about, what do you need? What do you want? And what's actually possible? um, and just talking through all the logistics, but also the emotions. Like, okay, you want to sell your house. Like, let's talk about how that's going to feel, because it's a process. We've got to pack up 20 years of memories and kids' toys and hash marks on the door frames of how tall they were. And so just helping them through that, like almost unburdening of the house, of the emotional piece of the house, is really important too. But I need to understand from them, like, where are you on the spectrum of an emotional basket case, or like you're like, yeah, whatever, get me out of here, because they're all across the spectrum.
I think, like with me, going back to me, I had a house in Arkansas and I sold that house. I needed to sell that house. That is what my husband and I bought. And I would tell people he was my dream and that was his dream, and I can't live his dream without him. And so my dream was to be with him, but I can't be. So I had to come over here. And so the sale of that house, it was kind of daunting,
Mm-hmm.
in the fact that I was dealing with grief at the same time. And I spent like 2.5 months devoid of human contact during the time I was packing up my house. And that process of selling that and getting out of there, it hurt for me
Mm-hmm.
to be in there. It
Mm-hmm.
hurt for me to sit there and to be there every day because I was alone, one, and he wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And then buying this house was had its own excitement and fear because, I got to be able to afford the mortgage and work through all of that. And I know that when my clients come to me and they want to keep the house so bad, and it's because the kids, that's all the home that they know. That's the one that I hear the most. It's the only home my kids have ever known. And I can tell you, being a kid coming out of a divorce, I so wanted out of that house so bad. I
Yeah.
wanted out of it because we could feel all of that fighting and negative energy in the house. We hated that house. We just wanted to leave. And it was the only house we knew as a family, basically.
And I always ask the question that when I need to get that answer out of a client's head and they can't get past the emotional piece, I always say, okay, let's take the divorce out of the picture. Let's pretend you've just outgrown this house, right? You can't fit your kids and their stuff and your stuff in this house anymore. You need a bigger house. Would you still stay here because it's the only house the kids have ever known? Or would you move for a better opportunity and a different opportunity, right? And I think they get so clouded with the divorce and it's already disruptive to the kids and all these things, which I understand. But like, let's just talk about the house, the four walls and the roof. Like, let's talk about the physical structure and how you changing that would or would not impact things. And sometimes they're like, oh, I get it now. And kids are resilient, you know?
They're way more resilient than we are, as
Mm,
long as we love on them. I think that's the thing. I was just writing the story of my divorce 21 years ago, and the one thing that I didn't do well enough was focus on my kids who were older, but it's still that the kids are so important. And that's why moms, specifically moms, don't want to leave that house. It's the only house their kids have ever known.
yeah.
And so, like you, I kind of do something real simpler with my clients, real simple. I just say, let's just take the kids with you as you go to find this place or that you're going to rent. Go take the kids with you. Let the kids tell you, this is my room. That's, because they're going to get super excited about that. And when parents, even grandparents that are divorcing have done this, I tell them, take the kids with you. And they're like, wow, I didn't know that it was going to be so exciting for them to try and pick their own room or to see the park that was right close to the house. Or it's we've just got to change the mindset of where we're trapping ourselves in, because like you use the word vibe. I don't I this is my preference for my clients. I really don't want my clients and their children inside that negative energy. It's what we as children felt. It just felt so negative for us.
Mhm.
And I don't want my divorcing person to sit in that negative vibe.
Mm-hmm. 100%. I think when you remove yourself from that energy and that vibe and that everything, your nervous system, it like takes a vacation. It's finally like, I can breathe again. I can think clearly again because all that negativity just shadows everything.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can go back through my divorce, I get to kind of measure this between the loss of a husband and a divorce. And I can tell you, the loss of a husband was way, way worse, but the emotions were way less intense as far
Mm,
as fear and far as um because I was afraid of my former husband. I was afraid of the conflict. I was afraid of being yelled at. And all of that was just so difficult for me at that point that 6 months after I left, I attempted suicide. And
yeah.
and that I haven't got to that part. I have felt when I'm driving alone, because my husband and I used to be together all the time. We were together 24/7. And when I was driving once, I was like, well, if I just drove off the road, nobody, I would be with you and nobody would know. And it was only that long, but the pain wasn't there like I did in the divorce.
Yeah.
That divorce pain that we feel when we go through that divorce, that gut-wrenching stuff is just horrible.
Yep. Yeah. Oof.
Yeah, just talking about it, we go back to that thought. So what are some of the other things that you end up talking with these women about when they're trying to decide whether they're going to sell and possibly even buy?
Yeah, a lot of the concern comes on the whether even I see this come into play when they are going to keep their house or when they're going to sell and buy a house alone. There's a lot of this like, what if the basement floods? What if the electricity goes off? What, like all these like what ifs? And I want to shake them and be like, you're the most capable human being and YouTube exists, right? Like, I mean, I was with a client this week and she was like, but what about this? I said, everything is figure outable. We Google it. I have fixed appliances. I have no business fixing appliances, but I Google some things, I try some things, and poof, it gets fixed. I think we worry about those kind of traditional gender roles of like, well, the man takes care of the house or, any of that stuff. And how am I going to take care of that? How am I going to know what contractor to call? I'm a resource. I'm sure you have friends who are resources. Like you're not alone, even though they worry that like it's going to be just me taking care of this house all by myself, which is a huge undertaking. So just trying to like calm those fears and let them know like, first of all, your basement's not going to flood, your roof's not going to go, and you're not going to get termites like all in the same week. Like those things aren't going to happen. So let's just take a breather. And when something does, we figure it out.
I laugh because even I come from a farm. So even even being married, I a lot of times was the one fixing stuff. Now my
Mhm.
late husband, he was very good at carpentry aspects, and so he did floor work. And so at one point in our other house that we shared together, we had to tear out the floor in our bedroom, literally clear to the dirt. And we had to rebuild the foundational part of that house because it had termites and it had got in and destroyed one of the footers on the house.
Mhm.
So we opened up and they were going to charge us $4,000 to do just that footer. And
Mhm.
so we had to fix the floor. So we jacked it up just a little bit, moved out the footer, put another one in, put it in place, built the floor. And we did that part together, but he had the knowledge of how to go through and do that. But like I move into this house, fix appliances, done that one,
Yep.
change, plumbing aspects, done that,
Yep.
put my dryer in and out with the dryer cord and
Mhm.
that type of stuff or the vent pipe. And I did all of that.
Mhm.
And if I couldn't do it on my own, I've called somebody and said, hey, do you know how to do this? Or could you tell me somebody how or
Yep.
that I could
Yeah.
call?
Yep. It's all manageable. All of
Yeah.
it. Every single bit.
Yeah. One of the things that when I was buying this house that I wanted with whatever house I was going to buy is a newer roof and a newer air conditioner because I knew those were the things that always went bad here in this part of the country.
Yep.
And so I ended up with a brand new house. So obviously brand new roof and brand new air conditioner. And
Mhm.
so those are things and that's where I work with my clients too. I work with that relationship with their higher power, God, however they say. But we've got to look at that there is a way to make lemonade out of the lemons, just
Yep.
like you did.
Yep.
And I would say I'm doing the same thing moving out here with my son. I'm making my lemonade out of
Yep.
the death of my husband, which was my lemons.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's easy to get caught up in the oh poor me and my life was just turned upside down and all these things. And for me, it's just a new opportunity to just does my oh yeah. She does my thing up here says she designed a life she loved. And like that's what leads me every day. Like I get up and I make plans and I look at my calendar and I think about things and do things that are all things that I love for me because that's all I have to worry about anymore.
Right, right. And to me, that is one of the best things. Now, yes, I am lonely, but I've got my son within 10 minutes of me. And I hang out at the tavern where him and
Yep.
his wife work all the time. And so I've made a chunk of friends, and several of them have come over. One of them's joined me for dinner, and I go out with a girlfriend and we go and eat. And so it's just when you move to a new location, and this location was super important to me. One is because of my son, but I'd started coming out here 10 years ago and
Mhm.
had already met people. So I had already developed beginner relationships with
Right.
people. And so those types of things were super important to me. And I assume because you moved back to the Boston area from Florida, that you went back to friendships.
I did. Yeah. So I previously lived in a very different part of greater Boston than I am now. And I specifically moved here because two of my dear friends are 5 minutes away. I go for a jog to their house on occasion, and just knowing that someone is there when I need someone to feed my cats because I'm working late, or I need help moving a table because I'm only one person, like any of those things, having someone close, whether friends, family, a good neighbor, whatever, is huge for sure.
Yeah. That brings us back to Google the stuff. If you can't fix it and you don't have friends, well, some of your friends are going to know who to call. So that's a
Mhm.
really good one. So when people are, they're selling their house and now they're moving into a new house, what are some of the things that you help them look for?
Ooh, that's a that's a long answer. I think we have some conversations before we even step foot in a place, saying like, what are your non-negotiables? Do you need three? You have two kids and you need three bedrooms, or whatever those kind of bare minimum bedroom, bathroom, square footage. Do you need a garage? Do you want a yard? Like, what are those things we're all looking for? And then the other piece is I always want to make sure they don't overspend, because banks will approve you for a really large amount that they say you are qualified for, but at the end of the day, you probably want to pull that back a smidge because you want to still go on vacation and have nice dinners out and not be house poor, as we say. And so I always try and really reinforce their budget, because it's easy to get budget creep. They scroll on Zillow or wherever, and then I get a phone call, can we go see this one? And I have to say, this is $100,000 over your budget that we discussed. Like, I need to make clear that that's the case, and you tell me where we're going from here, because I have a duty to you to respect what you've kind of laid out. So I do try and make sure that the property is manageable for them from a financial perspective, as well as just a day-to-day operations. Like, if you're a single woman, do you need 6,000 square feet, six bedrooms, and seven bathrooms that you've got to clean, maintain, fix, repair? Probably not, even if you could afford it, right? So what does just your day-to-day living look like, and how does that jive with this space, are some of the things I try and gently persuade and encourage them.
Good. Yeah. And some of the things that I looked at when I moved out here, I found a really cute little house and it was about, oh, 80,000 less than this one that I bought. So it was extremely affordable and
Mm,
my mortgage would have been about half of what it is now. And I initially looked at it with a girlfriend who was out visiting, and it the area looked great, everything was wonderful. I just worried that the house was way too little because I have some big chunky furniture and I was so worried that it wouldn't fit in. So I had looked at another place and that's where I found the house that I originally put my bid in on. And then after that one went down, I went back to that little tiny house and I decided to drive further out. And this time I had a different friend with me. And we're like, oh my God, we can't live anywhere close to this mess. So,
yeah.
so that was a huge thing for me is that the community needed to be conducive. And this one that I'm in is a brand new community. And
Mm,
and it was definitely within my price range. I ended up having to put a little bit more down on it to make sure that I could afford that. And
yeah.
so things worked for me and
Mhm.
that level. And and my realtor was huge in that aspect for me. I really, really adored her.
Oh, good. That makes me so happy, because there are a lot of great agents and a lot of not so great agents. So when someone does have a great agent, I'm super grateful for us as an industry.
Yeah. So one thing before we start the close process is I happen to know, and I knew this before I started the sale of my home a year ago, that there has been a big change in how the commission aspects go. So can you kind of explain that for our viewers?
Yes, and the answer is there has been a change, but really in practice, it's not so much of a change. So historically, if you're selling a home, your agent will say, okay, my fee is, we'll use round numbers, 6%. I'm going to keep 3% of that commission, and I'm going to give 3% to the other agent who brings the buyer. So you, the seller, are still paying 6%, but ultimately I'm only going to get half, and the other agent's going to get half. That's the way it's worked for decades. Well, now there was some lawsuits and lots of hubbub, and the upshot is sellers were feeling as though they didn't have control over what was being given to that buyer's agent, right? So they were just at the mercy of, well, my agent said they're giving them 3%. So they wanted more control. So now what happens is, in practice, when you are representing the seller, you say, okay, fee for my services is 3%, right? That's what you're going to pay me. Now, we can offer to pay a commission to a buyer's agent, or what we say here is when offers come in, the offer will say, we're offering X $100,000 and we are requesting that the seller pay me, the agent, 3%. So it's really just who's asking for it. And they're more negotiable now. So the seller could say, I like the purchase price, but I'm not paying them 3%. I'll pay them 2.5%. And so we're seeing more negotiation around commissions, but at the end of the day, the money still most often comes out of the seller's pocket. It's just that they have control over how much they're giving.
Yeah, that's kind of sad for the realtor. I've heard Colorado has some nasty stories going on in northern Colorado. And then here, there's a part of that changed where now you have to, of course, you have to put your earnest money down. But now and this is what happened to me, I ended up I had to throw $500 away because I didn't take the other house. And that's because they have to remove the house off the market. So that is the lowest amount that you can give them. And so that happened here in South Carolina when all of that realtor stuff changed. And so now if you take a house and even though it failed its inspection, I still had to give them $500 because they had to pull it off the market for that short time.
And rules are different state to state. So we don't have that exact situation here, but I do understand that other states have some wacky things.
Yes, each state is so different. So Amy, I know that your contact information is going to be here underneath the show and stuff, but can you tell our viewers how to find you?
You bet. So the easiest is thebreakupbroker.com. You'll find just a little blurb, who I am, what I do, and some ways to contact me there. On Instagram and Facebook, I am at the Amy Slate. Pretty easy to remember. You'll see a lot of coffee and cats and hopefully some travel soon and a fair amount of houses.
Well, this is good. So now that we're coming to a close, I can tell you that I'm a certified divorce coach. That means that I'm trained in the complexities of divorce. I specialize in the high conflict divorce arena, especially that from a toxic partner. My late husband, my dad, and myself all experienced abuse in some form or a lot of forms. And so not only do I understand that from the textbook, I also understand it from the experience, just as Amy expressed earlier. She knows that also. So I can be reached through my email at coachtinalynn@gmail.com. That's CoachTinaLynn@gmail.com. My website is divorcecoachspecialist.com. You can find me on social media under Tina Lynn Huggins. That's Huggins. And on LinkedIn under Tina Huggins, on Instagram under Divorce Tina Lynn, and on TikTok under Divorce Tina. And just find me under all of that. And so, Amy, in giving last minute advice to somebody, what would your last minute advice be to our viewers?
Assemble a rock star team. Don't be afraid to look high and dry and find the right person who is a fit for you and who can get the job done, whether that's an attorney, a coach, a financial advocate, a real estate agent, a lender. Like, you're going to have a baseball team worth of people in your corner that are looking out for your best interests and supporting you through the process. And so get those people on your side early.
That's a great bit of advice. And so I can tell you that when you're going through the divorce, that having a realtor there to kind of help give you the comps is huge. And I can actually point at Amy and I can say, Amy is huge at not only she's able to give you comps anywhere, and it doesn't matter where you live. Amy's able to help you in the early stages of selling your home and in buying a new home somewhere else. She can get you in touch with the perfect real estate agent so that you have that one person that is in your back pocket when it's time for you to make those decisions. So I often talk about abuse in our show, and we always give you the domestic violence, but I also want to let you know that divorce is very painful and very difficult, and suicide discussions in your head go on. So if you are having trouble, please call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. It's a real simple number, 988. Call the suicide prevention at 988 and talk to them. Let them talk you through this moment, because it's difficult to do this on your own. And if you're all alone at this moment, please reach out to somebody. If you are in a bad situation right now, call 911, or in the UK, 999. Get the police there. Press charges. The charges are your key out of the abuse. Do not drop those charges. Many times after charges are dropped, the abuse becomes worse than it was before. Use that as your key out of the divorce and reach out for help. Also, if you or somebody you know is dealing with domestic violence, please call the domestic violence hotline at 800-799-7233. That number again is 800-799-7233. If any of this has been helpful, please like, comment, and share that so that it can help others. Thank you so much for joining me here today, Amy.
Thanks for having me.